Burial Rites, Thragtusk, Angel, but then it kind of takes a little different of a twist to it. He's also running Sire of Insanity, Boros Reckoner, Blasphemous Act, a pair of Harvest Pyres, Faithless Lootings.
So this is a bit of a brew. I mean, I watched Joe yesterday, and oftentimes when we have Joe on camera, he's normally playing a Hallowed Fountain type of deck. Yesterday he was playing a blue-white-red control deck when I was watching him on my break that had a lot of Jace, Architect of Thoughts, not as much removal as Kenyo's deck, but he was playing what he typically plays, which is Hallowed Fountain and Sphinx's Revelation, and now he's playing a much different deck, and he's going to be against Kelly Thompson, and Kelly is playing the black-green control deck that we saw Robbie Cordell top 8 with last weekend when we were in Nashville. He went undefeated in the Swiss and then lost in the quarterfinals. This is your Desecration Demon, Geralf's Messenger, Disciple of Bolas deck that has a boatload of removal. Well,
because of the matchup here, you know, black-green basically being a board control deck, we're really going to get to see, you know, Joe Bass's deck. You know, it's going to get a chance to do its thing here.
Yeah.
We're going to get to see each of these card choices, you know, hopefully come up.
And now we see a Grizzly Salvage here with Unburial Rites, 2 copies of Boros Reckoner, Cavernous Souls, and a Blood Crypt. So this is not your normal.
No, it's at this point that Kelly knows that, okay, we're playing against a brew here. Grizzly Salvage and Unburial Rites, that's expected. But then when a pair of Boros Reckoners join it in the graveyard, then, okay, now we're not on the standard deck list anymore.
Yeah, this is a different take on Reanimator, and even though it is a different take, he's going to cast a Lingering Souls here, but he actually does have the necessary mana to actually cast a Boros Reckoner on turn 3, which seems like it could be a little bit difficult in a 4-color deck.
Yeah, well, he opts to go with Souls over the Reckoner, kind of implying that he's fine trading 2 tokens for the Geralf's Messenger, or maybe he just wants to try racing against it.
So in comes the Geralf's Messenger, and we'll see if Bass wants to trade here or not.
Yeah, my guess would be, okay, he's actually just buying time. Maybe he seems to think that his late game is good enough that as long as he can just keep as much damage as possible off him, that's going to be his game plan. Lingering Soul is actually a lot better at doing that than Boros Reckoner because it's much more resilient to, you know, 1 kill spell and swing.
So now we see a Desecration Demon here for Kelly Thompson as Bass is going to play a Boros Reckoner, put a Stomping Grounds in the plate tap, and pass the turn back. Desecration Demon, mostly known as a limited all-star, but it's beginning to make some waves in Constructed Magic now.
Well, it saw a little bit of play in Block Constructed when it was just 1 set. When we just had Ravnica, the Golgari aggro decks, you know, this was the most efficient beater they could come up with. Which begs the question, though, you know, it fell out of Block Constructed. You know, why is it seeing play in Standard now? I think it has a little bit to do with the fact that this deck is playing Augur of Bolas.
Or Disciple.
Or sorry, Disciple. Yeah. Disciple of Bolas, the 2/1. This is probably the biggest number for the lowest mana cost that you can get.
Yeah, and you get to draw 6 cards, gain 6 life with that quote-unquote combo there. And so now we're going to see the Desecration trigger. Probably going the stackers is moving to the attack step. We're going to figure out, you know, you see Kelly talking to the judge here, just getting some clarification on what he can and cannot do. This deck is really interesting to me again with Ice because this deck saw a lot of success on Magic Online, and now it's kind of making the transition over to real life Magic.
The black-green control deck?
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you attribute that to? Do you feel like this is just a new player in the format, or is it kind of, or is the format currently weak to what it's trying to do?
That's a really good question. I mean, when you look at this deck, it seems like it's just an anti-aggro machine with like these giant creatures, Thragtusk, Disciple Bolas both lets you gain life and draw cards, and then this deck has Mutilates, Victim of Night, Tragic Slip, Liliana the Abrupt Decay, so it seems like it's very, very good against non-Hallowed Fountain decks, and as we were talking about earlier, you know, Hallowed Fountain decks had basically not been being played. Now, of course, we saw Kenyo win the tournament with one, so maybe that's going to change soon. But this deck seems like an all-star against a non-Supreme Verdict type deck. Yeah,
I mean, we see a second Desecration Demon there, despite the fact that the card, you know, is a little dorky in that you can sacrifice creatures to tap it. This is a huge amount of power that he has on the board just as late as turn 5. He has, what, 15 power already?
So now Bass is going to come in here with a Boros Reckoner. Let's see what the follow-up's going to be.
It looks like he's just trying to chump block his way up to an Angel of Serenity.
Okay. So here's an additional Boros Reckoner, and now a flashback on Lingering Souls. Now, one of the things you also have to be careful with here is because, again, when you're Kelly, you don't really have an idea of what Joe's doing. Like, he cast a Grizzly Salvage, he has an Unburial Rites, he's got a bunch of Boros Reckoners in play, so, like, what's he up to? Like, you can probably assume Angel of Serenity's probably looming somewhere, but do you put him on having Blasphemous Act and Harvest Pyre?
I would put him, so, and this is a hard call to make, but when you're playing against a brew, you kind of have to think, okay, if I were a deck designer, what would I be putting in here? And when I see Boros Reckoner and then Grizzly Salvage, I think Harvest Pyre is the card that jumps to mind for me. Okay. You know, I'm loading up my graveyard and I'm playing Boros Reckoners. This Harvest Pyre stands to be pretty good in the deck.
But would you ever put your opponent on having Blasphemous Act maybe in this deck?
Probably not. I mean, it's not, there's Boros Reckoner, so it's not without, he could have it. But no, I probably wouldn't be playing around that at this point. What you do know is that Joe, the way he's playing these Lingering Souls, he could have tried to trade them with the Geralf's Messenger. Instead, he chumped one to a Geralf's Messenger, he chumped one to a Desecration Demon. He clearly has something in his hand that he's building up for.
Sure. So we're going to see an Abrupt Decay take down this Boros Reckoner. You see a Tragic Slip also in Thompson's hand to go along with a Thragtusk and a couple other cards, but it looks like he's just trying to clear the way to get these Desecration Demons and that Geralf's Messengers through.
Yeah, it looks like Joe's hand, he has the Angel to build up to, he has a Harvest Pyre, he also has a Sire of Insanity. That card, not particularly good on this board stage.
Yeah. I think most times that card might actually be okay against Kelly again. The one thing that you have to keep in mind is how much removal Kelly has access to that kills Sire of Insanity. And we can see here those Mutilates, a copy of Putrefy, 4 copies of Liliana in the Veil, and in times Tragic Slip can get the job done as well.
Yeah, I think the big concern is that it's very likely that Kelly will be ahead on the board a lot of the time in this matchup just because of how large of threats he's playing. And when you're behind on the board, Sire of Insanity isn't exactly the card you want to be playing.
Yeah. So Tragic Slip's going to take down that other Boros Reckoner. Here come the 2 Desecration Demons and a Geralf's Messenger into the red zone.
Right now, I think Joe's going to stick to his strategy before. He's probably going to chump block one or both of the demons.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't a fight he can win. He really needs to buy time for that Angel. I think probably the biggest concern is that he only has a single white source right now. So despite the fact he's buying time for the Angel, it's... Well, I think how he's going to have to cast it is you may see him try to play the Sire, discard his hand, and Unburial Rites the Angel.
Sure, sure.
That seems more likely than getting 2 white sources in time.
Temple Guard in the draw for the turn here for Joe, sitting at 13 life. Does he have time to do the things he wants to accomplish? Because if he does play, he's actually sitting at 10, excuse me, because the Messenger did get through. So here is your Unburial Rites. It's going to target a Boros Reckoner.
Yeah, so he's going to try to, it looks like he's going to try to cast the Angel instead of Unburial Rightsing it.
Yeah, and Abrupt Decay is going to mess up this entire plan. Desecration Demons are going to come across, and Joe Bass is going to be down a game here with this 4-color Reanimator deck. Kelly Thompson wins game 1 with black-green control.
Yeah. Now, do you think if Joe makes the play where he shocks him, so he can't shock himself to 8 for that Sire of Insanity because then he's dead on the next attack?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. So we'll take a look at sideboards here first, and I mean, it's kind of interesting that both of these decks are, minor players so far in the format, but we'll take a look at Joe's sideboard first, as he is going to be on the play here. We see a Purify the Grave and Olivia Voldaren, 2 Slaughter Games, 2 Electrickery, an additional Blasphemous Act, 3 Abrupt Decay, 3 Deathrite Shaman, a Cavern of Souls, and a Sire of Insanity. Matthias, what do you like?
Well, okay, so let's assume right now that Joe has studied up on his metagame and knows what Kelly's playing.
Sure.
You see some Desecration Demons, you may, unless you're up on Moto, you may not know what's going on here. You have to assume that Kelly will still have a lot of removal. As a result, the Graveyard package is the best thing you have going in your deck. You can hopefully just recur threats and get more cards than Kelly can kill. What you have to watch out for are these super aggro draws of Geralf's Messenger into Desecration Demon, creatures that are bigger than you can deal with. So cards that I like in the matchup, I like Olivia Voldaren. She probably doesn't live, but she can probably trade with a creature when you play her. Other than that, we don't see too many targets for Abrupt Decay. I don't particularly like that card. I don't think there's too much more in his sideboard that I'm really a fan of. I don't like the Sire of Insanities. Deathrite Shaman doesn't seem like it matters too much. You could side it in to try to nab a Geralf's Messenger on its way out.
Sure.
But based on the amount of removal Kelly plays, that doesn't seem like a line that's going to happen very much.
Yeah, it's not really too surprising, right? When you look at people how they're building their decks, this strategy isn't one that is in mind right now. And it's a strategy that's starting to come to the surface a little bit more here as we look at Thompson's sideboard. He has 2 copies of Vraska the Unseen, a Mutilate, 2 Ground Seals, 3 Duress, 2 Underworld Connections, 3 Appetite for Brains, and 2 copies of Golgari Charm.
Right.
Again, he's got more removal on the sideboard, and the Ground Seals, I feel like, are the obvious inclusion.
Yeah, Kelly's deck gets a lot better after sideboarding here. He gets the Ground Seals, and I have to think he's going to side in the Appetite for Brains as well.
Yeah.
Even though he saw his opponent play double Boros Reckoner, any deck that's on Burial Rightsing has got to have enough targets for an Appetite.
I mean, I'd like to assume that any deck that, as you said, that is casting on Burial Rites probably has some gigantic thing it's trying to cheat in a play, and oftentimes that seems a little strandy, so you'd like to get that thing out of here if possible.
Right, remember, Appetite for Brains exiles, not discards, which makes it particularly good here.
And if this matchup does get grindy, I feel like Underworld Connections is certainly under consideration here again, because I think there's going to be some back and forth here. I don't think that Kelly Thompson's deck plays out like it did in Game 1 that often. It just plays Messenger and a Demon and just attacks the opponent. I think that's one way that games can go, but I think more often than not in this removal-heavy deck, that Underworld Connections is probably the approach you want to take, where you just want to grind them, keep killing their guys, and eventually find a win condition and kill them that way.
Right. The question for Kelly is how much time he actually thinks he has in this matchup. I think against a traditional Junkrights deck, he probably doesn't have enough time for Underworld Connections.
Yeah.
You know, Junkrights, despite being kind of like on the surface a deck that doesn't come out of the gates at you, it usually wins by about turn 7, turn 6. So it's actually faster than advertised. And I think Joe Bass's deck is probably the same way.
I'm inclined to agree, and it'll be interesting to see exactly how both of these players do sideboard again, because these aren't like, this isn't a player going up against, I'm Junk Reanimator, I know what to do here. I built my deck with this in mind.
Well, I think Kelly, for the most part, can sideboard as though it were Junk Reanimator. The only difference is he may want to hang on to some Abrupt Decays. Because he's seen those Boros Reckoners, it's really pivotal that he has a cheap answer in case his opponent tries to Reckoner combo him.
And the other thing here, too, is that he didn't see any of the pieces to the Reckoner combo, which I think is important for Joe.
Right, he just saw the Reckoner.
Yeah, he just saw Reckoners, and you can make the assumption of like, he's just playing Junk Reanimator and then splashing in Reckoner, I guess, which is a little, weird or unwieldy, but, I mean, he's got a mana base that makes it work, so... And then I think that Joe has the potential to catch him off guard one of these games with a Harvest Pyre or with a Blasphemous Act.
Yeah, Reckoner's actually pretty decent in this matchup. Kelly does play Thragtusk, Sigralf's Messenger. Is really the only creature it doesn't stop is Desecration Demon. I think that's actually kind of Kelly's key card in the matchup. Joe does not have many answers to Desecration Demon. Like, one of his best answers is to Lingering Souls, sacrifice a lot of times.
Yeah, just keep that thing from being able to attack or block.
Right.
I remember when Desecration Demon was first spoiled, I mean, there was some excitement around the card just because it is so huge for its mana cost, and it feels like the things that you can do to control it are a drawback, and I feel like most cases it is for the opponent, but there are certainly situations that lend itself to be a drawback for you having that clause on it.
Right.
So we're going to see some more 6/6 flyers for 4 in action here. You got Desecration Demon, you got Geralt's Messenger, Thragtusk, and again, Disciple of Bolas, a card that they only play 2 copies of in this deck, but it works so well with everything else in the deck. I'm a little bit surprised to not see more copies of that card kind of floating around. Because it is just such a powerful effect, being able to sacrifice a demon, draw those 6 cards, gain that 6 life, and then just really pull far ahead.
Yeah, it certainly is the most efficient card draw you can be doing, I think, in Standard right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a unique way to go about drawing cards, and the 2/1 body that it leaves behind probably isn't like highly relevant in most situations, but to be able to get 6 cards right away, be able to gain 6 life, which is oftentimes going to be relevant.
It's the Black Sphinx's revelation.
Yeah, that's what it is. With some assembly required, excuse me.
That said, though, so Joe's down a game. I still feel like this matchup favors Joe in a certain sense. I think, and I don't know if you go with me on this, Joe's deck is pretty resilient to removal. A lot of Kelly's cards that are really the important cards, Liliana of the Veil, not particularly great against Reanimator strategies. I think it comes down to, Desecration Demon really seems like one of the key players for him.
Yeah, I think it's I do think that this is going to be a close matchup. I think Angel of Serenity really does have a huge effect on this game, because that's what Angel of Serenity does. As you see Kelly taking at least 1 mulligan here, and I have a feeling he might be taking another one. He's just trying to show the hand to the camera, saying, "What is this garbage?" And down to 5 he's going to go here. So we might be on our way to a 3rd game here in rather short order. But overall, I think I do agree with you. I think that things do kind of favor Joe, and things probably favor a more traditional Reanimator style deck as well.
Yeah.
The interesting thing here is, if you're going to make these drastic changes to a reanimation deck, like Junk Reanimator being like the hallmark of the format, if you're going to make some wild adjustments to the deck, I think you have to have a good reason to do so. And taking a look at Joe's deck list, like the power level of the cards that he's adding in for the switch, Boros, Reckoner, Siren, Sanity, Blasphemous Act, Harvest Pyre, there's some high power there, but is it worth it? Also, Faithless Looting.
I mean, so the reason you originally put in Boros Reckoner is to improve your aggro matchup, but I mean, Thragtusk with Restoration Angel is kind of, that is the anti-aggro plan of Junk. So the question is, is this actually even better?
Yeah. I think that's a question that you have to ask yourself as you see Joe casting Faithless Looting, discarding Lingering Souls.
3 flashback spells in the graveyard.
Yeah, and on Burial Rites, and now here's a Mulch. So Boros Reckoner, Temple Garden, Sun Petal Grove, and a Stomping Ground. So that's +3 on a Mulch here.
So Joe's deck really firing on all cylinders right now. Multitude of things he can cast, and he's using Faithless Looting so that he doesn't have to discard as well.
He is breezing through his deck this game, something we did not see in the last game at all.
Right, well, one thing he does get that the regular Reanimator decks does not is he gets access to Faithless Looting, which is, I think, unquestionably a very powerful card.
Yeah, I mean, one of the more powerful cards in the format that is just not seeing a lot of play. You know, we saw it in Humanimator and decks like that before the evolution took place. That Junk Reanimator was the better graveyard deck, but Faithless Looting was one of the things that really held those decks together.
Right, so remember, Kelly's on 5 cards. One thing which is, shows promise in his hand is that I think whenever you look at a 5, a mulligan to 5, what you're hoping for is a lot of lands, and it looks like Kelly has enough lands to at least try to make a game of it.
So we're going to have another mulch here. Unburial Rites, Grizzly Salvage, Temple Garden to the hand, and Thragtusk to the graveyard.
So Joe now has 2 Unburial Rites in his graveyard. Among targets, I think the Thragtusk is his best target so far.
We're going to see a flashback here of Lingering Souls. 2 Spirit Tokens are going to come into play. And we'll move on to Thompson's turn as he does draw Desecration Demon.
All right, so that is one of the cards he wants. And this time, Joe opts to trade his Lingering Souls tokens for Geralf's Messenger. Kelly with no land, unfortunately, there for his Desecration Demon. He's just going to have to pass the turn. Remember, Joe has double looting, double Unburial Rites in his graveyard, so we'll be sure, he has a lot of plays already available to him.
Double a lot of things to do, that's for sure. He's going to have no shortage of action this game. As he's going to tap 5 mana, he is going to cast a Thragtusk from his hand instead of Unburial Righting it. So plus 5 life and a 5/3 in play for Bass.
So one of the things which I guess when I'm thinking about a 4-color Reanimator deck versus a junk one is that even though Joe has access to more powerful strategies because of his 4th color, adding red, at the end of the day, what is it that he's doing with his deck? He's recurring infinite Thragtusks. Because even with the 4th color, that ends up being the most powerful thing you can do.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great strategy, and we've seen it over the past couple of months, as Bass is going to get a Beast Token in play here in just a moment.
He didn't forget his trigger, he's just making sure that they're using an appropriate token.
Yeah.
You'll be playing on the red table numbers at the front end of the room.
So we're going to see a flashback Faithless Looting here. Going to get 2 cards deeper. There's your Beast Token for now. Hit 1, hit 2.
Lingering Souls, another Thragtusk. What do you feel like he's going? Is it Angel Serenity is what he's digging for?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I feel like he's just looking to just have a million options available to him, and now you're going to see a hard cast Lingering Souls, and his mana is afforded in such a way that he can just do something like flashback Faithless Looting, draw 2, discard 2, and then play another spell and just keep digging through his deck.
Yeah, you always want to make sure when you're doing things like flashing back Faithless Looting that you're doing it with some sort of purpose.
Yes, I definitely agree with that.
I'm not sure what the purpose is right now. It's not a terrible play. I mean, it won't be bad, but if you like what's in your hand, I don't see why you wouldn't just cast what's in your hand.
Golgari Charm hiding in Thompson's hand right now. You see him flipping that back and forth with the Desecration Demon, trying to decide, all right, do I Golgari Charm this set of tokens, or do I think that Joe's going to make more tokens and make my Golgari Charm that much better? That's a pretty big question right now, as Thompson, again, is missing his 4th land, so he does not have the option to slam down one of those Desecration Demons yet.
So he's just going to hold back the Messenger as a blocker, and it looks like he's going to hope that these Desecration Demons, once he hits his next land, can pull him back into the game. He hasn't actually seen Angel of Serenity yet. We switched, our Centaur turned into the appropriate beast.
It took a couple tries, but we finally got a Beast Token out there.
So Geralf's Messenger, certainly one of the more powerful cards in Standard right now. What I like about the black-green control deck here is it's utilizing Geralf's Messenger, and something that this card's really fallen out of the meta, not because it wasn't powerful enough, but because it's really hard to find a good deck that can cast it.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the zombie decks, again, around November of last year, really dominate, win back-to-back constructed Grand Prix. But after Dragon's Maze came in, it really did fall off. And it kind of fell off with the last set, too, with Gate Crash. Just new aggressive strategies came out. They printed a lot more aggressive 1-drops like Experiment 1, and Champion of the Parish finally found its home. And Zombies has kind of been left in the dust because of that.
Thragtusk number 2 for Joe. Remember, he has Thragtusks number 3 and 4 in his graveyard in the form of Unburial Rites. Even a deck that's all creature removal has a lot of trouble dealing with this many Thragtusks.
Yeah. I mean, there are numerous reasons why Thragtusk is good, and that's just another one of them. It's because there's not a very easy way to kill that card outside of like the newly printed Turn and Burn.
There's just not a matchup that it's bad in.
Yeah.
You see, is that another Golgari Charm for Kelly? Whatever, it's not a 4th land.
What is
Perhaps. Perhaps it is.
Yeah, I can't really tell. He's really he's thumbing it forward. It might be a fourth land. I mean, we can't really get a good look at it. He's doing a pretty nice job of hiding it. All right,
Yeah,
and it
it's a
does
swamp.
look like a fourth one.
So I stand corrected. He does hit the fourth land. Question is, what is he going to do with it now?
Yeah, it looks like it might be an Overgrown Tomb or a Golgari Guildgate that he's kind of thumbing forward. It looks like a black-green duel. Could be Woodland Cemetery as well, but you see him speaking with the judge, getting some clarification on something of just what can I do, what can't I do. And hey, Judge, how do I get out of these Thragtusks?
Yeah, I think this is one of those situations where Desecration Demon's drawback may actually be a drawback.
Yeah.
Joe has access to enough Lingering Souls tokens that he can really falter a Desecration Demon enough times to deal 15.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be all that difficult for him at all. And so now it looks like, I mean, at this point, yeah, he's held the land long enough that he can't not play a land. And now there's a Desecration Demon.
Kelly down to 13.
So now here's a Grizzly Salvage, Sun Petal Grove, Grizzly Salvage number 2, Blasphemous Act, Boros Reckoner,
Right.
Cavernous Souls.
Now
So
the jig's up.
Yeah, now the jig is up on what's going on with Joe's deck a little bit here.
And if I'm Kelly, so to be honest, I'm almost at this point wondering, is Joe going to drop Island and Snapcaster the Blasphemous Act? Like, and I'm not even kidding. Like, I would actually be thinking that, like, okay, that could happen.
Faithless Looting. And what I actually think Joe's kind of going for here is, as he keeps digging, is he might be going for, Unburial Rites with flashback the Boros Reckoner and then finish you off with Blasphemous Act and or Harvest Pyre.
Yeah, I mean,
in the same turn.
that's certainly a flashy way to win the game. I don't like it as much because I think Kelly's deck has an awful lot of removal in it. I'm wondering, almost just Unburial Rightsing, keeping Unburial Rites in hand, casting it on Thragtusk, casting it on Thragtusk, casting it on Thragtusk.
Just grinding him down that way.
Just like every single turn make a Thragtusk. I feel like I'm not sure how Kelly answers that.
Sure.
I know that's boring, when you have this really cool deck. Like, well, I have all these cool spells, but the only one I'm actually going to cast is Thragtusk.
Yeah.
Like, who actually wants to do that? But I think it's a pretty good strategy right now.
Speaking of the devil, and he shall appear. Thragtusk is back from the graveyard via Unburial Rites, and now Boros Reckoner gets hard cast from Joe's hand, and he does pass the turn back. We think, yes, he does. Thragtusk the draw from Kelly.
Right, Kelly with no fifth land, but how do you answer Thragtusk? Well, a pretty good answer is Thragtusk.
Yeah. So let's see what Kelly can come up with here, because certainly has his back against the wall. Again, Joe has a million options down there in his graveyard of things that he can do with all those Lingering Souls and Faithless Lootings and Unburial Rites, along with those that last Thragtusk that's down there. So definitely a lot of options.
At what point do you feel that Joe at this point starts tapping Desecration Demon?
I think we're almost at that point.
Okay.
And you see Desecration Demon not being tapped here by Joe and not attacking from Kelly, so I feel like what we might see in the next turn, Matthias, is just flashback Lingering Souls, Desecration Demon trigger, go on the stack, sack my Lingering Souls, all that good stuff, as we're going to see a Mutilate here.
Yeah, Joe takes the damage and then Mutilate hits. And the Mutilate is for 3. It's a pretty convenient number there. It gets both the Thragtusks, does not get Desecration Demon.
Mm-hmm.
And Beast and Centaur into play.
The tag team champions.
Yeah, actually 2 Beasts. So Mutilate, because that Overgrown Tomb counts as a swamp, the Mutilate was for 3. A pretty ideal number. Basically, if you're, numbers between 3, 4, and 5 are all really strong Mutilate numbers.
And it's kind of the fun thing about Desecration Demon too, right? Where you get your opponent in a situation where they have to sacrifice a guy and up it, so that cancels out the Mutilate of how, it makes it difficult for the Mutilate to ever kill the Desecration Demon. Mm-hmm. It's a small little mini combo in this deck.
Right, so,
using the term combo loosely.
So Kelly's cards are pretty decent answers to what Joe is doing. So in that sense, if you're Joe, you have to worry that you might draw all your deck and not get anything. I think the 2 things you're setting up for are, you're setting up for Angel of Serenity, and you're setting up for a Harvest Pyre for 20 on a Reckoner.
Yeah. But now we see Joe is going to flashback Lingering Souls. He's going to put 2 creatures into play. And his last card in his hand right now, Matthias, is Blasphemous Act. That was the card that he finally found off of that Faithless Looting. So he's going to sacrifice a spirit, shows him Blasphemous Act on accident. Joe, your plan! Joe, your plan!
And I don't think Kelly's particularly worried about Blasphemous Act right now. He'd be more than happy to let Joe cast that.
In this current board set, yes. But again, Joe's plan is to set up, this combo kill where he Unburial Rites back a Boros Reckoner and then Blasphemous Axe you. It's kind of a unique way to go about winning.
Yeah, so Joe casts a Faithless Looting. He hits Blasphemous Act and Grisly Salvage, Angel of Serenity. He keeps the Angel as opposed to putting the Angel in the yard.
Yep.
He's interesting. There's still no Burial Rites left, so he must. What that tells me is I think he thinks his Angel is enough right now, just hard cast.
Yeah. And then if anything goes wrong, then he can get it back with the Burial Rites.
Right. He'd rather have 2 Angels than Angel plus more card draw.
You see Kelly Thompson taking a look at Joe's graveyard right now. And there's a lot of graveyard to look at, my friend, and a lot of things that do have flashback.
Well, there sure are 3 Thrag Tusks for an Angel of Serenity.
Yes. You see, Kelly for this turn did draw a Disciple of Bolas. So, I mean, he's kind of weighing that into the equation of, can I actually cast this and sacrifice the demon to gain 7 and draw 7? What does that do for my board position? And it is kind of appetizing to be able to draw 7 and gain 7 life here, but is it a game-winning play? It doesn't feel like it.
Well, what I wish is that Kelly's hand was just full of a lot of removal spells, and maybe he can do it. He could always Golgari Charm, Tragic Slip here, kind of get himself lower on cards, and then Disciple of Bolas all the cards back.
Sure.
The real question is, he does not have any actual, the Angel's going to be really good against him because he doesn't have a ground seal in play right now.
The Angel is just going to be, Angel Serenity is going to do what Angel Serenity does, which is be good once it is resolved. So Desecration Demon is going to hold back on defense. Joe is going to tap a bunch of mana real fast, and I'm going to cast Angel Serenity here.
All right, so pressure's on. What Joe can do is if he can shrink Joe's whole team in response to the Angel trigger, and then Tragic Slip the Angel, and whatever he targets will be exiled permanently, but it does stop them from coming back to Joe's hand.
Yeah, that is certainly an option here for Kelly, as he does have Golgari Charm and Tragic Slip in his hand. He can cast both of those spells right now, and it looks like we might see him pull the trigger on that. He's actually reaching for Abrupt Decay. Okay.
All right, that actually saves 1 more life in the Golgari Charm.
Sure.
So the demon, remember, because of that, it's like the reverse O-ring trick. Mm-hmm. The demon and both Thrag Tusks are exiled permanently.
Yep. But I think that Joe's okay with that because, again, it's just going to clear the way for his Beast and his Spirit, and then he can just happily pass the turn back with Kelly facing down lethal attack, and we're going to see a flashback and Lingering Soul, so now he's facing down even more lethal because he's going to go down to 3, and now you see a board of 3 Spirit tokens and a Beast token. Yeah,
and Kelly can Abrupt Decay Golgari Charm here. The question is, does Joe still have an Burial Rites left in his yard? I believe he does.
At least 1, potentially 2.
And without even looking at his card, he moves to attacks.
So we're going to see Golgari Charm here.
He tapped. Not how I was expecting him to tap.
Because now he might have to. And he doesn't even have Tragic Slip. Yeah, so he can't.
Okay.
Wow.
Are we okay with that? Are you allowed to do that right there? I'm not sure that's. It's understood if he threw both down and tapped all 4, I'd get it, but doing them one at a time like that, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. Where if he had played both at the same time, that would have been okay, but I feel like we're past the point where they can rewind the game and actually correct the action.
Yeah.
It was definitely sloppy play. I don't think it was intentional. I think he wanted to cast both the cards, but at the same time, he tapped his mana incorrectly, so he shouldn't be able to make that play. But we see Joe moving forward here with reanimating Angel of Serenity, moving some cards, reanimating a Thragtusk, and passing the turn back. And I'm sure that our judge is going to inform Kelly of what he did on that turn, and that is a no-no, as he's going to concede the game.
Right. Kelly does not have a way to deal with. The problem is Thragtusk. He has sorcery speed removal, but Thragtusk, just the beast from it will kill him. He's at 3.
Yeah. And thankfully, that did not have a huge impact on the game, as Joe did win the following turn. But again, we like to keep it as clean as possible there in the feature match area. So I feel like it was an honest mistake. No harm done.
When I play against someone in that situation, a lot of times, I don't even always. Sometimes I just let them do it. It's like, it's understood what you were trying to do in that situation. But that's really at Joe's discretion.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And I don't think that Kelly realized he was doing it. I think that I don't think that Joe realized it was happening either. So again, I don't think there was any malicious intent involved there. And again, I'm sure our judge will. Our judge has already talked to the players, and the players are perfectly fine with it. So we're good to go. Everything is kosher, as both players are going to be. We at least have Kelly looking at a sideboard change for game number 3 here, and Joe looks to be happy. If you're Kelly now, at least you've got some idea of what's going on with Joe's deck, so that's kind of comforting.
I mean, and I still think at the end of, like, when you're sideboarding as Kelly here, maybe, okay, I haven't played, I'm Kelly. I haven't played against Joe's deck yet, so there's going to be some surprise factor in it. I'm just going to, for the most part, pretend it's junk rates. You know, as far, because from Kelly's side of the board, the cards he cares about the most are the junk rates cards.
Yeah.
Like, you're playing against a quirky junk rates deck.
Yeah, it's like this junk rates deck with a combo kill, which is kind of nifty. I can dig it. I mean, it's a deck that certainly has a high velocity. It gets through its deck very, very fast and sees a lot of cards through Mulch, Faithless Looting, and Grizzly Salvage. So that's definitely an interesting part about this deck.
Now, I did want to address something. There's some people who are talking on our stream just asking about, they're saying, you know, they're not okay with the fact that Joe Bass was changing the order of his graveyard during that game.
Sure.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Legacy, that is something you're not allowed to do.
That is correct.
I believe the set it's Weatherlight, or there's some set where as soon as we get cards older than a certain set, I'm sure someone's going to say that it's not. It's some that then you have to maintain graveyard order. In Standard, players are not required to maintain graveyard order.
That is correct.
You know, what is it? When in Legacy you have cards like, what is it, Ashen Ghoul,
There are
or
cards like
Death Spark.
Corpse Dance.
Yeah, that actually care about graveyard order.
That's
but
correct.
Wizards has basically said publicly they will not print cards that care about graveyard order again. You know, but with a nod to older formats, when you play Legacy, you still have to do graveyard order.
Yeah. I actually found out the hard way in a cube draft last week that Corpse Dance very much cares about graveyard order, as I had made a horrible blunder with a Corpse Dance with buyback and was not able to return my Mirror Battle Sphere to kill my opponent. I deserve it. I deserve it. That was a good Reanimator deck too, Matthias. Should have won. I should have won.
It was a great cube. It was a great draft. It should have. You know, I always get scared when especially like on stream when I draft a good draft deck, because you always know if your deck's good enough, it's not gonna win. You know?
Yeah.
It's like this deck is this is working out too well. I'm gonna mulligan a bunch. I just know it. And like, you know, you'll do 2 drafts. The first one will be great and you lose, and then the second draft will be a train wreck, and then you'll make the finals and you'll just feel,
Yeah, you try harder with the bad deck.
Yeah.
It's like proven fact. When your deck is bad, especially like when you're in a competitive tournament, you try so hard to win because you know that you have to get every edge you can when your deck's bad. But when your deck's super good, you're kind of free and loose, and who can beat me?
And then suddenly you realize you get to this board state, you realize, like, wait, I'm gonna lose this game. That wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Hold on.
But I have so many rares. What's going on here?
Right.
Yeah. It's scientifically proven that that's what occurs in Magic. So we see both players shuffling up here for game number 3. If you guys are, again, just joining us here, we're in round 3 of 9 in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. Matthias Hunt, Cedric Phillips. SCG Open Series has made it to Dallas. Feel free to join in on the conversation with us, which you guys are obviously doing, as Matthias is checking the computer. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGDAL for your tweets. We're going to crown at least one more champion today.
Yeah.
And we'll be interested to see how our standard format keeps progressing, as Blue White Red from Ken Yeo did win our first Standard Open this weekend. And we'll see if we'll have a repeat performance of Sphinx's Revelation and Hollow Fountain decks, or are we going to go back to the boogeyman that is Junk Reanimator.
Well, I mean, is it still the boogeyman? You know, yesterday we had, Junk at the top tables almost the entire tournament, but then when we reached the top 8, there were only 2 of it in the top 8. Both had to win their way in, and then both of them losing 2-0 in very quick order.
Yeah.
Would you still say it's that, you know, with the meta we have here, did you actually want to be the junk player?
Well, I don't know that I want to be the junk player, as we see Thompson resolving his sign in blood, so he's going to move down to 18. But, I mean, that being said, like, I still think that it is the top deck to beat until proven otherwise, and one tournament's worth of results is not going to sway my opinion on that just yet. I think that, you know, this tournament is certainly going to be an indicator of what we see as people are moving more towards aggressive strategies, as we see a Mulch completely miss 2 Grizzly Salvage, a Blasphemous Act, and a Thrag Tusk.
Yeah, not even any flashback action. So, you know, Joe obviously not very happy with that one. I guess what I'm trying to touch on is that because it's a double open on with most of the same players, can you expect a similar metagame? You know, a similar aggro-filled metagame that's somewhat hostile to junk, right?
That I think you can. I don't think that doesn't mean that junk can't win, but I agree with you that is a much more hostile metagame. As Mulch hit 2 cards there, and now Joe's going to play a Dragon Skull Summit and to resolve a Faithless Looting. I certainly agree with you that, yeah, this format and this room that we're in, especially yesterday, and I'll assume the same for today, was very aggressive.
Yeah. Joe's hand looks to be just a lot of lands and a Thrag Tusk.
Well, Faithless Looting will help fix that.
Yeah, as he discarded 2 lands to the looting.
So Kelly draws a card, and is Kelly missing his 4th land again?
Yeah, he discards for the turn. He has the Desecration Demon. A little bit of an aggressive keep for him there.
He has 3 copies of Desecration Demon, as we're going to see another Faithless Looting here from Bass. You see a Lingering Souls and another Faithless Looting there, so it looks like he's discarding a Godless Shrine and a Faithless Looting, but he's actually found some flashback cards here now.
Right, so interestingly enough, I think Kelly has correctly assessed that Desecration Demon is the nuts in this matchup.
Yeah.
So, you know, even though his hand has a really bad curve, I think he wants to he kept a triple Desecration Demon hand. And what that's going to do, as soon as he hits his 4th land, I think the way, basically, his Desecration Demons have to raise the potential Angel of Serenity that Joe might draw.
Yeah. And we saw Thompson take a Dross Messenger and put it right into play at the top of his deck. Draws a Cremate for the turn, while Joe Bass played his 5th land and put old Swag Tusk into play. And now here comes the Messenger.
So an interesting decision he has to make here. If you're Kelly, do you try to get value off this Cremate, or do you try to cycle it to hit your land?
Just to actually hit the land drop for the ever important Desecration Demon. I think that's super important.
I might hold on to it and play it on Joe's turn, but I'm certainly casting it this turn. You know, I have to hit this land. I'm not winning. You know, Kelly's not winning the game unless he hits it.
Sure. You see Kelly has brought forward a Tragic Slip, considering, should I take care of this beast right now so that my Messenger, can keep attacking in the future, or should I hold it for a little bit later and try to find a better spot? But it looks like he's going to pull the trigger. It feels like he's going to pull the trigger. He untaps a land, and it's just going to pass the turn back, it looks like.
I mean, I think it's okay to do it end step, provided none of your lands are Golgari Guild Gates, in which case you probably should be doing it main phase.
All right, here comes the beast.
Kelly at 15. And I think Joe, despite having it's interesting, this happens with Reanimator decks, despite having cast a lot of spells, Joe hasn't done a lot of things.
Yeah. Because we're going to see a Mulch here take a Temple Guard, and you see Thragtusk, Angel of Serenity, and Boros Reckoner go to the graveyard.
I think this is now Kelly he pulls the trigger on this Cremate. Angel of Serenity, remember, that's the card that's going to beat him. I think he exiles it.
We'll see if he's going to pull the trigger here. As you see Joe taking a look through his graveyard right now about what he wants to do. Do I want to flashback Faithless Looting? I do. I just want to keep digging. Lingering Souls and Angel of Serenity are the draws.
So he has another Angel in his hand. He's going to discard a pair of Lingering Souls.
There's a Godless Shrine and passes the turn
and
back.
Kelly is going to save that Cremate for value. So it's interesting to note here, what we should think is, if the next draw of Kelly is a land, he time-walked himself by not playing that Cremate. He's drawn a Putrefy, it looks like.
And discarding a Desecration Demon, not attacking with Dross Messenger, and saying go. So Joe's going to draw a card for the turn. He draws another copy of Faithless Looting.
Yeah, this just seems a little greedy. I understand what he's trying to do with the Cremate. And, you know, it is fair that that's such a good card in this matchup that you really want to like to get value off it. But right now, the problem is he has 2 Augurs, 2 Desecration Demons. He has so many cards in his hand that cost 4 that he's essentially I don't think the game's going to last long enough for him to play all of them. So he's essentially like discarding a card every time he doesn't get his 4th land.
Sure. I don't disagree with you one bit, as we're going to see Angel Serenity here, but Tragic Slip is with the Morbid. So what happened there is Joe attacked with his Beast token, and then Kelly blocked.
Right.
And then, because of that block, now you see a Tragic Slip with the Angel's effect on the stack.
Yeah, and what Joe... The thing is, last time Joe let all 3 get exiled, because the exile trigger is a May, and it was important. I think it was important to Joe that the Desecration Demon on the board got exiled, so he was willing to take the hit and exile both his own Thragtusks. In this situation, so you're wondering, why weren't all his Thragtusks or card he was targeting exiled? Yeah, the Angel's a May, and since they're all his own cards, he just will decline to exile them.
So now here's a Mulch. 4 cards deeper. Rootbound Crag and Blood Crypt to the hand. Boros Reckoner and Thragtusk to the bin.
Yeah, just more cards. Basically, I love the interaction of Mulch and Faithless Looting. It essentially just turns into card draw without any investment.
But again, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, Kelly again misses his land drop and doesn't even have green mana to cast a Ground Seal. But as you mentioned earlier, Joe is drawing a lot of cards and seeing a lot of cards, but he's not actually doing anything.
Right. What he's doing is he's setting up really nice Faithless Lootings, which are, it's a lot of work to get divinations, essentially.
Yeah.
Granted, every time he hits an Unburial Rites or Lingering Souls, he's drawing extra free cards.
So here's a Grizzly Salvage. Here come 5 cards. Unburial Rites, Angel of Serenity,
this is big.
Sire of Insanity, Lingering Souls.
He's going to grab the Sire of Insanity.
I'm going to take the Sire of Insanity.
Kelly, with no mana for the Putrefy, does he even have an answer for Sire?
I see a cremate and not much else.
Yeah, his main deck has Victim of Night in it, and Sire, I believe, is a demon. So it's funny. Victim of Night, I generally think about it as a card. It can't kill evil things, but it can kill demons.
Yes.
And what is it? It can't kill werewolves or vampires or zombies.
Demons aren't evil.
No, demons are fine.
Demons are playful.
All
See,
right.
everyone's
look, he's playing with that guy.
everyone's having fun. See?
Little guy, he's dipping in a pot. They're playing a game.
Yeah.
And
Why would Victim of Night kill that? They're just having a good time. I think Kelly's having a good time too, because his entire hand's about to go to the graveyard.
So I said in essence he's discarding cards by not drawing his land. I didn't mean he's actually discarding cards.
What Siren's Hand is holding is the cards in Kelly's hand. They're going into the pot. That's what's happening.
There's a little bit of a lesson there, as on that cremate, he finally draws his 4th land and then discards it.
Yeah.
So like, well, there was a way that wouldn't have happened. And I don't... Kelly, because of all Joe's resources, all his divinations are coming from the graveyard. This is a situation that I don't know how Kelly pulls back from.
Yeah, I mean, all kidding aside, obviously. I mean, Kelly missed a lot of land drops. Here's an Unburial Rights, and Kelly is going to concede the game. This Siren's Hand is probably what Joe was digging so feverishly for in that game with the Grizzly Salvages, with the Mulches, and the Faithless Lootings. But either way, Joe Bass is going to move on to 3-0. He defeats Kelly Thompson in his Black-Green Control deck 2-1, and with any luck, we might have a little chit-chat with Mr. Glenjamin Jones. See if we can get Joe's deck maybe underneath the old deck tech spotlight here. It's an innovative take